Providing insights to help you grow your business, improve yourself, and add value to those around you. You're listening to the Success is a Choice podcast, where you get a peek into the lives of industry leaders as they share their stories with you.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Success is a Choice podcasting network for our Coachable Coach series. We will get right into our guest in just a moment. But first, I want to remind you that the Coachable Coach series on the Success is a Choice podcast network is made possible by the leadershipplaybook.com. Great teams have great teammates, the leadershipplaybook.com. And right now, go ahead and get yourself 25% discount when you use the coupon code CHOICE, as in success is a choice, at the leadershipplaybook.com. We really appreciate you guys joining us, whether you're watching this on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Rumble, whether you're listening to this on the Success is a Choice podcast audio network. Today's guest is an old friend of mine, an old coaching colleague, but he's had success at every stop he's been at. He's been the volleyball coach at Bryan College down in Tennessee. He's been a Division I volleyball coach at Gardner-Webb, and now he is at Grove City College in Pennsylvania as the assistant AD for sports ministry, and he is also the volleyball coach there. He's also a published author. He's got a book, Ordering Our Steps. So, Leo Sales, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here and great to catch up with you, Jamie.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you jumping on this. I butchered. I said the wrong name of your book. It's Ordering Your Steps, not Ordering Our Steps. But
actually, no, you're correct. It's Ordering Our Steps. So you're in good shape.
Ordering Our Steps. Okay,
yes.
That's great because our is like plural. It's team.
Yes.
It's team. So, well, this is the Success is a Choice podcast network. You've been successful at a lot of different places. What is kind of your idea of success when you get to the end of the season or even mid-season and you're evaluating your team, you're evaluating your success, or you're looking back at your career up to this point? What do you find has been successful, has been satisfying, your definition of success?
Okay. I think there are a couple things that come to mind. I know one for me is just seeing my players have bought into the program. And that's not only in a season setting, but also long-term, you know, when players get back in touch with you and they're still calling you coach 15, 20 years later, 30 years later, you know, it's meaningful. It means that you had an impact on their lives. And so seeing that they're bought into the program, they're bought into the culture, they're carrying the culture with them. I just think about the former players who I hear, you know, constantly saying, yeah, coach, you know, now that I'm on the coaching side, it made me think of something you said. Sometimes it can be the most random comment. Sometimes it can be something that's very intentional, you know, that we brought through our culture. But I really think short-term and long-term, it's seeing players that are bought in and take the value from the culture with them as they leave the program. And then I think another thing that always stands out to me is, do we see forward progression? Do we see players developing? Do we see individuals growing, or are they staying the same? If they're staying the same, I can't say that we're really doing anything to influence or impact their lives. So, you know, seeing an impact beyond the wins and losses, seeing that they're applying the principles that we have within the program, not just, you know, as they move on in life, but in their daily lives, in their academic lives, in their business lives, that they're using it to become better people overall. I think those are maybe it's an old coach view of success, but those are things that I find important now when I look back, not only on the season, but also on my career. Jamie, I can't hear you right now.
Yeah, first time ever doing a podcast. You know, I forgot to take it off mute. But your answer, how does that lead to wins and losses? a cynical coach would say. It sounds kind of kumbaya. It sounds kind of
Yeah.
touchy feely. How you still have to win. How do you align that? How do you reconcile those thoughts of, yeah, you still have to be excellent and you still have to win games?
Well, I think part of it for me is just the understanding of what it means to be a competitor. And understanding that we're agreeing with whoever the opponent is, that we're going to play it by this defined set of rules, that there will be a winner and a loser. It's not a matter of, we just show up and we play without scoring. I'm in the business of sports. There's going to be a winner and a loser every game. And so we design our culture and the principles that guide us to strive for success on the court, when the wins and losses, the results on the board, to strive for excellence in what we're doing. I believe that if you're doing things well, if you're doing them the right way, if you have the ability, the talent that balances with the team you're playing, you have a good opportunity to see the result on the board that you're looking for. So excellence is built into our culture, but it's more than just that. It's also what I call competitive excellence, the understanding that we want you to be able to bring your best. It's a John Wooden statement: bring your best when your best is needed. That when the game is on the line, that you can go out there and execute your plan, your offensive or defensive goals, whatever it is that you have set for that day, that you can handle the pressure of the moment and be able to produce. And I think that's absolutely critical for anybody that's involved in this business of sports, that we're trying to produce athletes that can handle the moment. And those are principles that carry beyond the sport as well, which, as we're talking about, those are things that can make you a better business leader, a better parent when things are critical at home or you're dealing with a tough situation, just a better individual. Just team principles that are critical to success on the win-loss column, but also critical in life as well.
Well, you were an athlete growing up, I believe, California, out on the West Coast. You play, and you've been a coach at the high school level successfully, the college level. You've had to adapt throughout the years.
Yes.
How you're coaching now, those athletes, the parents, the even volleyball to a degree, it's progressed through the years. How have you been able to adjust, to adapt, to transition, to be a better coach now than you were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, even 25 years ago?
That's a great question. I really do think a lot of it, for all of us, that we all have to have a certain amount of humility, in that we need to be able to recognize, we need to be able to take hard looks at ourselves at times. And I know there are times that I've struggled because, personal pride, things were going well, and man, I've got this system worked out, it's all great. And then you transition to a new level, new division, new team, new program, and all of a sudden the culture that you had at your last school doesn't necessarily fit the same way. Now you've got to adapt and adjust. And so being humble enough to take a hard look at yourself and say, hey, these things that I may have been able to use 5 years ago, 2 years ago, a season ago, may not apply in this moment. And so from that, just kind of a humble standing, being a learner of the game and a learner of, to me, I think you have to be a learner of people as well. You have to be able to recognize as culture changes around you, and be able to adapt to those cultural changes, those nuances that we see year to year in a 4-year cycle and a 10-year cycle, and be able to adapt your coaching accordingly. And so being a learner of the game, a learner of just people in general, I guess I would call myself a people person. I love to engage in conversation and listen and hear, life stories and then build out from there. So I think the humility to be able to take a hard look at yourself and recognize mistakes and be able to learn and grow from them is critical if you want to be in something like this long term. To me, any type of career long term, if you're not adapting and adjusting at a certain point, your system may not work anymore. And so we've always got to be adapting to the new and adjusting as the culture changes around us.
Well, you're talking a lot about soft skills. You're talking a lot about the relationship that maybe you have with your players, those kinds of things. But that's not the traditional way of coaching. A lot of times we look at it as do as I say. I'm in charge. I'm this leader way up here. I was hired. I have this business card, a name tag or a plaque on my door. I'm the boss. Do what I tell you to do. And certainly there's time for that. But it sounds like that's not necessarily how you what you would subscribe to as a coach, at least all the time. You believe in empowering your athletes to a degree. Why is that important? Because if I'm a coach sitting there and I kind of subscribe to the theory of, hey, I'm in charge, do what I tell you to do. they might not want to listen to what you're saying because they don't understand, well, why is that even important? How could that even help not only the athletes, but why would that help me as a coach?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I really do believe in and you said it, in empowering my athletes to take ownership of what we're doing. I remember something my old coach told me, and at the time it made no sense, but maybe it's just the age thing that's coming in. But he said to me at one point, Leo, I can only push you as far as you're willing to go yourself. And there's a part of that, I always was like, well, no, I've got to take you further than you think you can go. And I still believe in that. That's part of my job, is to take an athlete further than they believe they're capable of going, because I can see the big picture possibly better than them because of my experience and training, all those other things that come to play. But at the same time, if they don't take ownership in it, there's always going to be a ceiling to what they want to do or are willing to do. And so I think that's where the relationship comes in, and being collaborative. At the end of the day, I am the one that sets the standard. I am the one that is the gatekeeper of the culture. And I hold to that 100%. We've got principles in place that are the principles I believe are important for this program, but it's my job to engage my athletes and get them on the same page where they buy into what we're doing. To me, if they're buying in, now they're making them a commitment that's even deeper, because this isn't now important to them. But I do believe, I always tell my players in practice, hey, this is discussion time, this is collaboration. But when we get to a game in volleyball, the point is on the board. I've got 5 seconds to make a change, maybe 8 seconds before the referee blows the whistle. And now we don't have time to discuss. I'm going to give you a tip. I'm going to give you a suggestion. I might give you a play. We've got to go. And so that's where that sense of, this is where I'm the one that's guiding the ship and leading, kind of steering the rudder. I need you to be on that page, so when that moment comes, you're ready to buy in and say, yeah, we're going to do this. And I think that's that combination of collaboration, ownership, and also being willing to be the one that takes the risk, and win or lose, I will take the failure if it's my decision. But I'm also willing to share that victory if it's a decision that you bought into and went along with me. At the end of the day, I'm the one that's going to be the one that's held accountable for what happened. So I've got to be willing to take those risks.
Well, you do hear coaches sometimes say, well, kids these days, they don't work hard. They're not committed. They won't run through a wall for you. But I see kids doing that if they believe in you. And a lot of the stuff, almost always when I hear that from a coach, they're the coach that leads through power. Hey, you need to follow me because I'm in charge. That's who I hear that from. I rarely hear it from a coach coaching and leading like you're doing. So I think that's so important. If you want those kids to run through a wall for you or for their teammates, then you need that collaborative spirit.
Exactly. I fully agree. I love that phrase, if they don't believe it, they're not going to do it. As much as we know that physicality is a huge part of any sport, but at the same time, man, if they don't believe they can do it, it doesn't make any difference what I tell them. They've already started out the process from a mindset of failure. And so, in order to get the mindset where we want it to do, I think that's where that ownership and belief comes into play 100%.
Well, are there certain things that you do, activities, events, or programs that you use, or just are there things that you do, tangibly speaking, to help build your team, their trust in one another, their trust in you, your trust in them? Are there some things that you do with your program?
Yeah, there are a lot of things that we go at intentionally, not only within my program, but here at Grove City College that were some of the things that led me to this place. We have a great leadership training program that's run by one of our other associate athletic directors, where we're each season, once we finish our season, we'll go into the spring. We will take our leadership core. I don't believe in just having captains. I have a core of leaders, someone from each class that we're developing, our captains, younger players that we believe have the potential to become future leaders, trying to prepare them, mentor them, so that we don't end up with a gap. Sometimes you can have that great leader graduate, and if you haven't prepared the students behind them, you may sit for a year just wondering who's in charge from the student standpoint. So trying to make sure that we're ready for that perpetual leadership becomes very important. So each spring we have a 6-week training period where all the students or the athletes from the fall teams are gathered together, and we have several of us that share different principles that we believe are important, core values that guide our department, that they can then carry into their team setting. From there, I begin to meet. The NCAA has given us the opportunity to meet with our teams up to 10 times for leadership development. So I believe 100% in grabbing those opportunities during my off season to meet with my leadership, to meet with my core, and to bring in one or two others that we want to develop into that core, to talk through our team principles, to talk through our core values, to help them understand how those core values affect them on a daily basis, how they affect the weight training, how they affect the practice setting, so that the players begin to understand it, can articulate it, and it becomes important. As we said, it becomes important to them, and they take ownership of it. From there, we also do things like we have what we call encouragement partners, where an older player is paired with a younger player, possibly by position, sometimes just based on personality. We'll do this with our incoming freshman class as we go through the summer, to guide them through the principles, to do some studies, just to prepare them for an understanding of what the culture is going to be about. I know one of the things that my seniors always talk about is we always have to prepare them for what they know is my number one rule: 10 minutes on time, or 10 minutes early is on time. On time is late. That's one of the first things they tell the girls automatically: do not show up late. But it's just one of those principles that we have in place. We're going to make use of the time that we have, because we know other sports are going to come in and demand time on our floor. And so we have a 2-hour period. Let's make sure we can use those 2 hours. Just simple principles like that I pass along to the girls, and the girls are able to pass along to those that are coming behind them, so that everybody's already on the same page. It makes it a little bit easier to establish our culture when it's being passed down a little bit at a time, in little tidbits, instead of all at once, where it's just wham, here you go. And that way the girls can soak it in and make it a part of their daily routine.
Well, how do you deal with, you mentioned the on time type thing. A lot of people have issues with rules. What kind of rules do I have on my team? How do I enforce them? But ultimately it comes down to a lot of, standards and accountability. How do you hold your athletes accountable without being an absolute dictator or turning them off? Not that you shouldn't enforce rules, not that you should be worried about everyone's feelings all the time, but how do you hold athletes accountable yet still have this kind of this spirit, this culture that you're striving for?
So I believe it's important to have a cultural piece that includes our vision for the overall program and some timeless principles that can carry through year to year. Being at a Christian college, there are some very important core values that we have in place that drive everything we do. The first one being we believe that we're focused on Christ and Christ alone, and that's always going to be who we seek to honor and glorify. We believe in the importance of community, building relationships intentionally and connection with each other. We believe in character building, and also, this is the one that I added when I got here, we believe competition and being fierce and understanding that ultimately we are playing then we begin to build out principles. And I'll take the community principle for a moment, and just let's say that we have a player that is constantly talking about other players. Maybe she's fourth on the depth chart and she's looking ahead saying, well, so-and-so is always playing. Why do they get playing time? And beginning to talk poorly about other players. Well, instead of just bringing them in and saying, well, you're talking badly, therefore I'm going to do this, I will bring them in and go all the way back to our core principle. Hey, let's talk about what community is. What does community look like? Community is relationship building. Community is building a connection between your teammates. In building connections between teammates, we believe it's important that we are not speaking negatively, of others, that we are not comparing ourselves to others. And that's one of our principles, is no comparison. Therefore, let's take a look at what you're doing. Now we begin to talk about the daily interaction that we're seeing or hearing. And we hold them accountable, because what they're doing is they're in breach of our core value. From there, I don't believe in having a tit for tat set of rules. You do this, therefore it's this. I believe it's important to engage in conversation, because sometimes you'll find out there's a core issue underneath that may be more important to deal with on a personal level. But I will hold them accountable if they're in breach of our contract. And basically, I will meet with them. My assistant coach and I'll talk together to discuss what we believe is a viable consequence, or however we're going to hold them accountable. It might be something as simple as they're going to go before the team and apologize for their behavior. We're not necessarily going to put a physical consequence in. Maybe it's that they're going to have lunch with that player that they have been comparing themselves to for the next 2 weeks to just get to know them on a personal basis. But we'll try to set the consequence based on whatever the infraction was, instead of trying to have, as you know, if I set a tit for tat rule book, it's going to continue to get longer every year. But in having these core principles in place, it allows us to engage in discussion and guide people the right way for the right reasons, instead of just, well, you did this, you're in breach of contract, therefore here's the consequence. And I think that's worked well. There have been times that I've had to, really, really pull teeth to try to get people on the same page. But I always go back to those core values and tell them, look, you said you bought into these core values to begin with. Mm-hmm. Can you see where you are now is moving a different direction from our value? We want to get you back in line. And so we're working on redeeming that relationship and restoring them into a right relationship with the rest of the team. And therefore we're building community again. Does that make sense? I think that kind of is a big summary statement of, one particular issue that sometimes we run into.
Yeah, and it's difficult to do that. I think it takes more work to do that, and which is why a lot of coaches just have the tit for tat, like you say. Hey, you break this rule, this is your punishment. But then that paints you in a corner. It puts you, sometimes you're not. If Leo is a great kid, Leo's always doing what's right. Jamie's not, and we commit the same. We're late to practice, and our punishment is this is what happens. Well, we might get punished the exact same, but Leo's punishment may seem like it's more harsh because this is the first time Leo's ever messed up.
Kind of building on that. Here's the perfect example. 2 kids show up late. 1 kid never set an alarm, just forgot that practice. Now this would be a big one for me. Forgot practice started at a certain time, because we try to have a set time for practices, and we always, let them know weekend or beginning of the week, this is the practice schedule. Player B is late to practice. But she's late to practice because the professor required her to finish the last 2 questions on the test before he would let her get out. Therefore, she was 10 minutes late trying to get to the training room and trying to get to the court. Well, as I meet with both of them, why would I have an issue with player B she's doing what she's supposed to do? She's taking care of her classwork. She was required by the professor to stay. It's not her choice. It's out of her control. We will talk with her and say, yeah, we want to try to do better. Maybe have a discussion with that professor, or let the player have a discussion with that professor. But I don't think we're going to do anything. But player A, you forgot. You just totally blanked out. This is something that's supposed to be important. You said you've dedicated yourself to this, and now you've eaten into my time. So therefore, let's set a consequence that will bring you back in line and get you to buy in. Not just a physical consequence. I'm not just going to make them go out and run 10 laps. Done that before. 10 bleachers. Done that before. Burp, whatever. But let's find something that's viable, that's also going to draw them back in to the core and not just push them aside. And that takes time. And sometimes I've had assistants that look at me that are like, why don't we just do this? Well, yeah, but why don't we hear what's going on first? Because there may be something else behind that we need to take into consideration.
Yeah, or how apologetic they are. Some people may come in with a million excuses. Yeah, we had a similar situation actually when we were coaching together at Bryan. I had 2 young ladies miss the same practice. It was the first practice back after Christmas break. 2 young ladies missed the same exact practice. One, when she arrived on campus, was blaming her parents for not waking her up. She had every excuse in the book. The other one was just so apologetic. She just, typical. Well, we ended up not punishing them the same exact. Now, and depending on the situation, though, that takes a ton of trust. You have to build up trust and earn trust as a coach too in those situations, which is why a lot of people don't do it that way, because you have to work pretty hard to earn the ability to lead by the heart, or lead with the heart, or punish or not punish by the heart, or whatever, or to have different punishments for different people. And that's difficult to do.
Agreed. No, I think you and I both probably have heard, the statement about the leadership change in your pocket. If you haven't built up that change in that pocket, you better be very careful, where you decide to draw your line, or which hill you're going to, die on, because you could lose all that leadership change and you're not getting it back. And it takes time to build that up. It does take time and commitment and dedication to building the relationship, and, seeking understanding and clarifying to get the full buy-in where a player will run through the wall if you say we've got to go through that wall. I mean, that takes a lot to get to that point.
Well, you mentioned earlier some of the ways you've changed or become a better coach by transitioning, adjusting, adapting through the years. Was there one mistake or two mistakes you can really put your finger on and say, man, I wish I could have gone back and done it differently? Getting that time machine and go back. Was there anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, I can think of really two. So one of the things about my experience at we'll just say one institution that stood out to me is at this level, at the college level, recruiting is a huge critical component of the game to be successful when it comes to the score on the board. And I found that I'm not a normal salesman. If I believe in what I'm doing, I can sell it to anybody just because I'm going to talk out of my passion and my love. If I don't believe, I realize now that I can't do it. I can't. And it's one of my own principles about just trying to carry some integrity, that I cannot look a parent in the eye and say, hey, everything's going to be fine. You know, we're going to look out for your daughter, if I don't really believe, that's the case. And I stayed in one place too long without that belief and realized that, if I don't believe, my players aren't going to believe because they'll see through me. And I think I paid the price for a couple of years because I had reached that point. And instead of either trying to sit down and adjust or figure out what the issue was or move on and give that opportunity to someone else, I think I tried to stick it out. I think some of that was pride, just I can fix this, I can get this, without realizing that there's nothing I was going to be able to do on the court to change it if I didn't have the belief myself. And so just understanding it, and this is more for me, I don't know that it applies to everybody, but man, if I don't believe 100% in what I'm doing, I shouldn't be doing it, because my lack of belief will begin to show in my efforts, in the way that I'm trying to build relationships, and it just shows up in too many different places. And eventually, what I'm doing is just not going to be effective, and it starts with me. And so that was a big lesson for me to learn. I think one of the other ones is understanding that in the coaching world, a lot of us end up transitioning to new coaching positions, whether it's, we change schools, and this is middle school, high school, wherever you are. So, transitioning to a new school, transitioning to a new level, it always brings new challenges. There is no system that I can walk out of one school and say, this is it. I now have the plan that will work anywhere I go, and just walk into a new school and think I can just take it and plop it down. I know one that hit here was, so I came from a good institution that was solid academically. I'm at an institution that is a high academic institution. I brought my academic philosophy, and part of it was that we are going to have study hall 8 hours a week. I just want to make sure that you're doing the bare minimum. We're going to have our meetings once a week, and just, different things that I had in place. I had two girls in tears in my office saying, Coach, you don't understand. I'm putting in 30 to 35 hours and I'm barely making it. I'm just barely eligible, but it is the best that I can do. And at first I was like, okay, we're going to work with you. We're going to draw that up. And as I went through the semester, I began to realize they were truly doing the best that they could do. The standards in the classroom were so much higher, that sometimes a kid with a high school GPA is going to come in here and struggle. And I had to adjust what I was doing, understanding that they were already putting in the work. I don't need, with most of my players here, I don't need to follow up. I can usually go to the study rooms and library and find most of my girls at some point in the afternoon and evening because they are putting in the time. And so I adapted my academic philosophy so that it became more of an advisorship. We're going to meet with them. I meet with the freshmen at the beginning of the year. We talk through what I ask them to give me their schedule. And then I give them time to sit down and put together their own matrix of a time management sheet. And believe me, some of the things that they're coming in with, I'm like, I should just put that on a wall. Maybe I should do that in my life. I mean, they're phenomenal. And so I can look at it and say, you've got your plan in place. This is good. Let's follow it along. And then I try to be available and meet with them a few times during the semester, just in case they need to make an adjustment. Maybe something's not working, and now I can bring in the resources that are available at the school to come alongside and help them. And so it's just a little bit different. It's a different culture here, and I had to adapt what I was doing to fit the culture that's here. And so I encourage that with any coach. When you're going through a transition, yes, there are going to be principles you can carry with you, but you've got to walk in with your eyes wide open and take a hard look at the culture that you're inserting yourself into, and take a hard look at your own culture that you hope to put in place, and see where you may have to give a little bit, see where you may have to adapt a little bit, so that you can make what's important to you fit within the school that you're going to, or within the culture that you're inserting yourself into.
Very good. He's Leo Sales. He's the head volleyball coach at Grove City College in Pennsylvania. And we appreciate him being on the Coachable Coach series of the Success is a Choice podcast. And until next time, everybody out there, wherever you're listening to this or watching this, remember that success is a choice. What choice will you make today?